Thank you for joining us for a very important conversation about Canada's economy and solutions to bring Canada back on a strong economic footing. As many of you already know, Frank is perhaps Canada's most successful entrepreneur. He came to Canada in 1954 with $200 in his pocket, started a one-man operation in downtown Toronto, and grew it into Magna International with 180,000 employees, $48 billion in sales, and 340 factories in 34 different countries. Today, Frank will be talking about solutions on bringing Canada back on a strong economic footing. Frank introduced what he called the fair enterprise system and a corporate charter into Magna International, where he saw Magna grow exponentially. These 7 principles that Frank will discuss today in the Canadian Economic Charter are based on the foundation that made Magna the success that Magna became. Before we listen to Frank speak, I would like everybody to take a look at the screen over here for a short biographical video on Frank Stronach. Thank you.
In 1954, at the age of 21, Frank Stronach arrived in Canada with one small suitcase and not much else. Today, he's changed the way cars are made, and along the way, reinvented the sport of horse racing.
I'm a great believer in luck. The harder I work, the more luck I have.
Sure, he had no more than a few $100s in his pocket, but he had skill, savvy, and a vision.
In my early years, I had no great philosophies. My only drive was never to be hungry anymore.
In 1957, Frank opened his first small factory in Toronto. Times were tough, and he didn't get his first car contract until 1960, an order for 300,000 sun visor brackets. He never looked back.
Do I respect him as a businessman? Absolutely. I respect anybody that starts out sleeping on a bench in a garage.
This is not an easy business, and to build upon success, this is not something you see every day.
He has a good understanding of people and what motivates people. He, says, look, using common sense, what would motivate me?
You know the Magna culture, right? Nobody works for me. You people work with me. I'm working for you.
The roots of the Magna culture began when Frank introduced a profit-sharing plan in his factories. He calls it fair enterprise. Wall Street calls it Frank Stronach's success formula.
The history of mankind has always been dominated by the golden rule. Here's the gold makes the rule. But I don't want to be dominated by anyone. If I feel that strong, I should not be able to dominate somebody either.
And that's why Frank created a corporate constitution and an employee's charter that are unique in the world of business. In 1960, Frank bought his first horse. And today, he's one of the world's leading thoroughbred owners.
Frank, you and Magna have created so many jobs for people around the world, and in the process, have enriched so very many communities. I'm proud to know you. I'm proud of our friendship. I'm proud of the vision you've displayed throughout your business career.
In 1995, Frank was inducted into the Canadian Business Hall of Fame. In 1998, his horse Awesome Again won the Super Bowl of horse racing, the Breeders' Cup. In 1999, he was awarded the Order of Canada. In 2004, he donated $8 million to the local hospital for Aurora and Newmarket, Ontario, and, once again, won the Breeders' Cup with Ghost Zapper.
Ghost Zapper!
Today, that young tool and die maker who came to Canada 50 years ago is a respected entrepreneur, a community leader, and the premier player in the sport of kings. And along the way, he's done it all his way.
Over $500 million has been raised to help the victims of Hurricane Katrina. Many Canadians have opened up their wallets, including Canadian auto giant mogul Frank Stronach, the founder of Magna. Yesterday, he headed down to Florida to meet with the hundreds of people he's helping by providing them with accommodations at his horse training facility, Palm Meadows.
I can't think of a better guy or a bigger mensch than my friend Frank Stronach. You and Magna have done so much for communities and charities around the world. Congratulations once again.
I sometimes say, and I'm not quite sure yet when I grow up what I will do, There's a lot of pride when you start something from scratch. So you want to look down the road and say, I hope you've put the right foundations in that this company will carry on for the next few hundred years.
Frank Stronach will be taking questions after he's finished his speech, and then we'll sit down for dinner. So thank you so much for joining us. We also have books for sale, and Frank will be doing a book signing as well, if you'd like to purchase your book over there. So let's give a warm welcome to Frank Stronach.
Thank you, Ivana, and it's great to be here. It seems to have a lot of nice people here, and life is a question of fate and circumstances, being at the right places at the right time with the right ingredients. So about 70 years ago, I arrived in Toronto, with $200 in my pocket. I didn't know anybody. I'm a tool and die maker by trade. And so I was fortunate to find a job very quickly. And it was a small company, about 10 people. And after a few months, the owner said, Frank, you're doing a great job. I want you to be a partner of mine. My chest swelled a little, and that's pretty nice. He was a nice man, but he never really wrote it down. So I came to the conclusion it's not a big deal to run a business. So I looked in the papers, I found the job, doubled the pay, and 3 years later, I had $5,000 saved up, and so it was a building I rented half the size of this room here. I bought a few used machines on a down payment, and out I went hustling. I worked in the factories, and I said, I'm very good in solving problems. If I can't solve the problem, you don't have to pay me. So obviously I solved problems, because after 1 month I hired somebody. After 1 year I had 10 people. After 2 years I had 20 people. And so life is always, it's an evolutionary process. Every so often you run into obstacles or situations, and you got to find answers. But anyway, I noticed my foreman, a German fellow by the name of Herman. I said, Herman, what's the matter with you lately? You're a little different. So he says, well, Frank, I'm thinking to start my own business. I said, well, I sympathize with that. So I said, look, let's talk tomorrow. Maybe we find a better answer. But anyway, that evening I was talking to myself, and I said, if that foreman's going to leave me, that would stifle my growth. It's no good for me, right? The next reason, I'd like to even rest. If that foreman's got to leave me, I got to do all the work myself. I like that less. So the third reason was, if I hire a new employee, a new foreman, and I don't show him how a business is run, I still got to do all the work. And if I show him how a business is run, after 1 or 2 years, he will start his own business again. But anyway, the next day, to make a long story short, I said to Herman, look, why don't we open up a new factory? You own 1/3, I own 2/3. He looked at me and in my eyes, and I said, do you mean it? I said, yes. He went right away to a lawyer, wrote it down, and a few months later, the factory was built, and he was so proud, and he worked like crazy, right? I'm telling you that story because it's very difficult to understand. How can a person build a company with 180,000 employees, right? So anyway, the foreman worked like crazy and was so proud. And so what I did over the next 5 years, I took five more foremans and did a similar deal. And after 5 years, I had a huge cash flow. It was already about maybe $1 billion in today's dollars, right? And so anyway, I became philosophical and I thought about, over the years, I experienced a lot of things. There were times when I was hungry not because I wanted to lose weight. I was hungry. I had not enough money to buy food. If you experience that leaves a big impression in your soul, right? So anyway, so the private company, so I had six companies and they had a huge cash flow. And then I came to the conclusion, maybe I should do something to benefit the employees too, as well. Can I do something where I benefit and the employees? So I decided I took the private company public. I put it on the public. It was a public company traded in Toronto, the Toronto Stock Exchange, right? And after a few years, and we're going back to around in the early 1980s, I put in a corporate constitution, right, an economic charter of rights. The foremost principle in our economic charter of rights was how we allocate the profits, right? So the profits, 20% of the profits went to the shareholders. 10% of the profits went to the workers over and above the wages. Half they got in cash, half they got in shares, so they became very large shareholders. 6% went to management. The management had a very low base salaries. 7% went to research. Research is the foundation for the future, and 2% went to charity. When I put in this formula, our profits rose 40% the first year, 100% the second year, and 200% the third year. So what I want to demonstrate, what I want to bring across is, without workers, you can't make a profit. And if you engage workers in a tangible way, that they can participate and get a portion of the profits, you release a huge energy, right, beyond anything, right? Because the workers on the front line, they can see how to make things better and cheaper, right? So really, that's really the essence of the economic charter, right? So my mission basically is, I want to see Canada being the first country in the world with an economic charter of rights and be part of its constitution. Okay? Okay. So the message I want to get across is the human charter of rights alone is not sufficient. We got to fortify it with an economic charter of rights. Economic charters of rights will lead to economic democracies, and economic democracies are the basis for democracy itself. But we got to realize the world has always been dominated by the golden rule. Who has the gold makes the rule. Okay, now you don't see the rulers no more. The rulers might be in Hawaii, might be in Beverly Hills, might be in Monaco, but they are there. I call it the financial elite. The financial elite doesn't want to share the profits with the working class. That's the dilemma. And we have to dismantle the golden rule. And I'm saying it's a revolution, but not a destructive revolution. It's a revolution of the mind. The revolution of the mind will be an economic charter of rights. Okay? So I said earlier on, economic charter of rights are very important. But let me put it in a simple language why it's so important, the economic charter of rights. All politicians agree, all business people agree, if the economy doesn't work, nothing else will work. If the economy doesn't work, you cannot feed the hungry people. You cannot look after the most fragile people, the elderly, the sick, and the handicapped. But we do not talk what drives the economy. It's the economy, the economy, the economy. We do not talk. The message I want to get across loud and clear is, without workers, you can't make a profit. Okay, so it's so important, you know. That's the essence of the economic charter. We are not preaching to take away from the rich. What I'd like to get across is we must let workers participate to make the economic pie. In the final analysis, everybody gets a bigger slice. So that is the very key is we gotta make capitalists out of the workers. We gotta give them a chance to participate for a number of reasons. Basically, we live in a the world could go very in different ways, you know. And right now, you have two economic cultures emerging, you know, rapidly. One is the communistic culture, economic culture, as practiced by Russia and China. So basically there you have about 10% of the population are part of the military, another 10% of the population are the super bureaucrats. So the 20% tell the 80% what's good for them. Don't walk across the road. Okay, don't walk across the line. But yes, I think the working class is better off, you know. They have maybe more food now than many years ago and better shelter than years ago. But they're curtailed on freedom. Freedom, I think, is number one for people, right? And people give their lives for freedom. So freedom is, and the capitalistic system is, there's more freedom there. Not a lot of it, because more and more wealth is held by fewer and fewer. The capitalistic system, if we leave it that way, it's self-destroying. And I'm saying we should not destroy the capitalistic system. The capitalistic system, I propose, we should endorse and should help for companies below 300 employees. Let's let the system play its structures there, right? So yes, but the capitalistic system needs harnessing when they go larger, right? When companies go larger than 300 employees, then the communistic system, then the law would say the workers get a portion of the profits, right? Okay, that's the capitalistic system needs harnessing. We got to realize now that about 1% of the population in the United States owns more than 50% of the wealth. So the 1% tell the 99%, you got all the freedom in the world. The kid in inner city Detroit, freedom, the human charter of rights has no meaning. He's free to be hungry. So people are free to be hungry, and that's the divide between the very rich and the working class. We have to do something. Corporate charters of rights will correct that. So we got to realize you're not a free person unless you're economically free. What are the minimum standards to be economically free? The minimum standards would be if a Canadian woman or Canadian man has worked for 30 years, he should have enough accumulated to own their own house or condo, mortgage free. It should have at least $300,000 in the bank to subsidize their old age pension. So when you get older, you can choose your own road to happiness for the remaining years. How many do you know which are economically free? It's a shame. It's a shame. Because we advanced in technologies to such a degree. Where did the monies go? Okay, technologies should benefit society, but it benefited maybe relative few, right? So that's again, but we are not talking to take away from the rich. We're just saying we must let workers participate, to make the economic pie. Economic charters of rights will eliminate poverty, and 60%, I would say 2/3 of Canadians work very hard every day. They get up in the morning and work, and they wanna create some wealth so they can live in dignity, help their family. So the economic charter of rights will build the middle class. The 2/3 would be economically free. So what about the other third, right? Because there's so many from what we eat. Kids climb up a tree, might fall down. There's so many incidences, right, which could create problems. So, 1/3 of the people have problems, right, for one reason or the other, which are not, the universum is very hard to understand. But, how can a small kid falls off the tree, is innocent, how, certain things we don't understand. But anyway, the 2/3 would be so rich that they could be helpful, that we could help the 1/3 with better education, better foods, better thing. We could bring it maybe down to 5 or 10%, which would be not so blessed by fortune to have ailments one or the other. So anyway, over the years, I've been given a lot of lectures from Harvard, right across the States, right across Canada, right across Europe, and and so about 80 years ago, I looked in the mirror and said, Frank, you've been missing a lot of things here. I criticized myself because I was on the boards of about 8 universities, and universities get great faculties in regards to medicine, in regards to technology and the arts, but very little on humanity. So basically, the mandate of our university is to teach young people how to create a more civilized society. Universities will be the ideal institutions to work what structures do we need, which would lead to an ideal society. At this time, we have no blueprints, right? So it's time that we think about it, right? And the system doesn't work anymore, right? And the living standards have deteriorated over the last 50 years, at least 50%, right? If not more. And I noticed, let's say for the last 70 years I've been in the country, I noticed every year the bureaucracy was climbing and climbing, right? The bureaucracy increased about 500%, right? Okay, but anyway, the very key is we can only bring about changes if we go about it in a civilized way. If we point out and say tech groups are the problem, but these things won't work. So we got to be very civilized, but we got to change things, right? Okay, and I'm saying small business has always been the backbone of Canada, and family farms also, right? Okay, we got right now they're so tied up in red tape, we got to set them free, right? Okay, and by setting them free, we gotta get the regulators out of them, right? Because I said, about when the first computers came on the market, the slogan was, if you got one of those computers, you could eliminate a total office floor and a high-rise. And now, when I look around 50 years later, there's 20 times more office buildings all the way around. It doesn't matter what city you go, Might it be Ottawa, might it be Toronto, Montreal, New York, Chicago, it's the bureaucracy has risen, What do you think they do in there in those office buildings? They don't make products in there. It's bureaucracy, it's regulators. We have a lot of regulators which regulate regulators. So we have to be very civilized. I could say we should send maybe 60% of the bureaucracy home, but be fair to them, right? And give them a 5-year payout, right? With and maybe if they find a job in the private sector, they get an additional bonus. But we gotta think in those ways. We gotta reduce the regulations, and politicians should not have more than one term, right? So when I take a look sometimes in history, did somebody do it right? Or had somebody good ideas? I think Winston Churchill stood out. Winston in his later years says, he used this language, goddamn parliament, he says. There's only politicians in there. The mandate of a politician is to be elected or re-elected. So the problem is the country is run by political reasons rather than socioeconomic reasons. He said we need a chamber of citizens to balance out the bureaucrats. But, a chamber of citizens is very cumbersome. I'm saying Canadian small business could be the chamber of citizens. If they do well, the whole country would do well because they always played on a level playing field. So it's very important. And I've created we call it a new wave common sense business society, right? So the future of Canada is in the hands of small business to band together, they be a political force, because we cannot let the politicians just print more and more monies. It doesn't work that way, right? So those are the great problems. The Economic Charter of Rights has 7 principles, and there's leaflets here. So I guess I talked enough, and I hope I provoked your mind. I hope you don't regret that you came here and listened to what I had to say. I have no agenda. Life's been great to me. Beyond sometimes I'm saying, look, it doesn't matter how smart you are. If the stars are not aligned, it won't work. So the stars have always and ever conscience. The country's been great to me. I had over 400 factories in 34 different countries. I could have lived in any one of the countries. I chose to live in Canada. Great country, great people, but we did not participate as people. We're all a little bit to blame for. We just believed in governments that they will help, they will do, but for the last 7 years, every year they lose more and more monies, okay, so it doesn't work. Anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. If you got any questions, I'd be very happy to answer, to give your reflect on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you for everything you've done for Canada and continue to do for Canada. If anyone has any questions, if you just signal me and I'll come over with the microphone. Would anybody like to ask a question? Yes?
I wrote down 3, but I'll only ask 1. So what do you think is the most pivotal moment in your career? The challenges you had, what year and why, and what did you do to succeed in that area?
Well, the focus was always every day I went to work, I had to think, what do I have to do that workers respect me? You got to keep workers happy. We had the most modern, human rights infrastructures, right? We had about 1/3 of our labor force, which over 60,000 women we have, right? And just picture when women got to go to work and they get harassed and things. So we created hotlines. Men or women could call the hotlines, and we had former police officers, highly trained, and they looked after the hot calls, and if there was corruption or molestation or whatever, right? So it was an ongoing process, to what do we have to do to keep the workers happy? And the other thing we did do, which is a first, as you know, the financial capital gets audited vigorously, like by tax department, just about every. We have audited the human capital. I've never seen that any other company's done that. We had the unit worked something like that. Let's say First of all, I did not allow companies to grow larger than 300 employees, right? So basically, my reason was, if you got a large company, you got a problem, you got a large problem. If you got a small company, you got a problem, you got a small problem. But it goes much deeper, huh? When you go with 300 employees, people become a number, and it goes deeper and deeper. So it's people want to be treated as individuals, right? So we had a very, very unique. So the main thing was always, what way can we improve it? Can we improve the condition? If you gotta go to work, is it relative happy? Is it relative? So that's the key, and that's the key to thing here, to get the respect and keep going, staying on top of it, and listen to the workers. What can you correct? Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions?
So Frank, what chance do we have? I have a small business. I moved it out of the country, but this is still my home, and I'd love to come back. What chance do we have to get together?
To bring changes in a society, the timing has to be right? Unfortunately, we say the timing is getting, or the conditions getting worse, right? The pain factor hasn't quite set up yet, right? And, I started that kind of late, right? I really got into it about 2 years, and I looked left and right. I marked down an economic charter of rights. What are the things from the tax reason, from a lot of reasons. And, over the years, I've been on the boards of banks, corporations, New York Stock Exchange, corporate governance. So I've accumulated a lot of know-how, and so I applied that. And nobody can knock what's in the corporate charter of rights, right? So hope is very important. Okay, so we gotta get the small business. The politicians know, the politicians are trapped in a system. There's so much bureaucracy, right? And the politicians are afraid to say, look, we gotta lay off, we gotta reduce the bureaucracy, because it's a huge voting bloc. So the only voting bloc which could be higher than would be small business if they band together. So basically, I'm trying to look, you got to join, because the Chamber of Commerce hasn't done it. The independent, nobody rung the alarm bell. Okay, so I'm saying, look, you like your kids, you got to do something, right? So you got to band together, you got to create a political force. So it's the New Wave Common Sense Business Association that said, look, it's a new wave, and they endorsed the economic charter, right? The economic charter, when you look, it's a very simplicity. It's just economic principle. It got nothing to do with politics. And so I left the 7 principles that define a consensus, right? Of course, there would be other things, the school system, medical system, but I left at the thing that you could find consensus, and that we can bring Canada back on a sound economic base. I do have hope. We have to, everybody's got to take it seriously, but we got to be very civilized and say we got to make some changes. The politics, we can only change it in using the democratic ways, because if you use any other, that's not. It's only the democratic way we can have the right, an ideal society, right? Okay. So anyway, I do have hope, but everybody, you love your kids, and but keep, where else do you go? The other have worse problems, okay? So Canada could be the first country which would adopt an economic charter of rights and fortify its constitution. Okay, thank you.
I have to just say, the people in the room here are what's going to make the difference. Just counting the people that are here, if every one of you left here and told 2 people every day for a month, and they told 2 people, and they told 2 people, we would actually reach billions of conversations. We could definitely reach 70 million conversations. If we can have that many conversations in 1 month, what difference can you make today, tomorrow, the next day? We're at how many thousand now?
6,000.
We're at 6,000 members. So go online, join, tell your friends, tell your business friends. If you want to make a difference, it's up to you. Yeah, the code's at the back. And you can just go online to New Wave, NW, Common Sense, CSBA, Business Association, NWCSBA.com. Sign up, join up, and get all your friends to join up. You all know people who know people who know people. It's entirely up to you to make the difference.
Thank you, Kirsten Kelly. By the way, I should have introduced her earlier, right? She is a director of the Economic Charter of Rights and plays a great role. We try to have balanced people, and no left wing, no right wing, which is the very civilized thing here, where we try to get the message across, especially to small business. Look, you gotta band together. When you band together, you're a huge political force. And in all fairness, when you bring about changes, the first thing goes to, how does it affect me as a business? And, or what's in for me, whatever, right? But small business, we say, look, small business doesn't make a lot of money, but small business wants to grow. So that means they hire monies, they hire people, and it's the workers which pay an income tax, right? The owners, so call it the entrepreneurs, usually, and when they start a business, they only take out as much what the family needs to live, right? And leave the thing in and risk call it their capital, right? So we gotta, it's the future of Canada lies in the hands of small business, right? And so, and we gotta, we over-regulated, right? And small business for centuries have regulated themselves quite well, wise councils, etc. The bricklayers, the plumbers, the carpenters, etc., right? And so workplace safety is important, the environment is important, and ethics is important, but they could do it, small business could do it in a fraction what just let's take an example, right? Just about a month ago, the feds got together with the provincial and say, look, let's do a program that people can afford to buy homes. But what was the program? They said, we bear the cost to get the permits, right? And that's why, so the bureaucracy on a municipality has grown, right? Because the feds and thing, look, governments can't give you anything else, like they take it away from you first. In that process, they waste a lot of monies. So they had to print quite many billions to come up with the program, right? It looks like the government is helping them, but they just encourage, they just ensure that the bureaucracy is grown and grown, right? Totally, we got to realize to be in parliament, to be a politician should be to serve your country. It should be an honor to serve your country. And you only should be in for one term. Repeating here, because to serve, yes, it doesn't have to be all businessmen. They could be doctors, could be artists, could be sports thing here, but we do need people which understand the economy, because if the economy doesn't work, you can look after the hungry, you cannot look after the hospital, you cannot. So it's the economy. Anyway, thanks for listening, and Okay, one more. Yeah.
Yes. Frank, thank you for your two words. My lovely wife, Christine, and my friends, Gernot Vaderbauer and Aaron Hopkins, it's here only for your speech. We are driving from Austria to Canada. And we are very proud of you. You are traveler, you are living from Austria for many, many years to Canada. We are very proud of you, of your person. You are humble, you're honor persons. Frank, I have a question. What is your mission for this moving, for the Canadian economics new?
Well, my mission is, or my conscience tells me, look, when I run Magna, I couldn't. I had to look after shareholders, so I'm fairly independent now. My family's got enough not to worry. And my mission is, I want to see Canada being the first country in the world which will support the human charter of rights with an economic charter of rights and be in its constitution, right? It's so simple. It's beyond, and sometimes it's the simple things you miss. I stumbled over, life is a question of fate and circumstances, to be at the right place at the right time with the right ingredients. And that happened to me. I'm not, it just happened, right? But it's so simple that we missed that. But it was also by design because the financial elite doesn't want to share the profits with the working class. And if the divide is too big, a society cannot function, right? So the economic charter of rights will eliminate poverty, and will make more than 2/3 economically free. And the greatest thing in life is to be economically free. Okay, thank you, right? Okay, thank you. Okay. Canada is a great country, great people. Like I said earlier on, I have factories in 34 different countries. I choose Canada. Okay, so I'm doing, my conscience tells me what I accumulated, they shouldn't be lost to the younger generation, right? I have no agenda of a certain age, right? So, I would like to see it that is still alive, that the economic charter be part of the Constitution, but I know I've opened the door, you can't close it. Okay, it makes too much common sense. It's grassroots, and people will, in time, will be aware, look, that's the way we should go. That's the most civilized way. And we could eliminate poverty, and most of all, it's an ongoing thing. What is the structure of an ideal society, which we got to work on it, huh? We still, when you look at the wars, the way we keep animals, the way we slaughter them, the way we're still kind of cruel, right? So we gotta, universities should play a greater role by teaching young kids to have more civilized society, and universities would be the ideal institutions to look for structures which could lead to an ideal society. Again, that's okay. Thank you for listening, and we'll do it again one of those days. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you for your inspiring words, and thank you for everything that you continue to do for our great nation. We're very lucky that Canada was the first to come through with the visa, and that you are a Canadian fighting for our nation. Thank you. Before we sit down for dinner, I just wanted to let everybody know that Frank will be happy to sign some books and take some questions as well, if you'd like to come speak with him. And everyone has a Canadian Economic Charter pamphlet, which outlines the 7 principles. At the back of that pamphlet is a QR code. Please scan the QR code, sign on as a member. Membership is free. We just want to band Canadians together to bring in an economic charter under the Human Rights Charter. And if you sign on, we can spread the word and we can get Canadians focused on bringing this Canada back on a strong economic footing. Thank you. I think I have one more question, Frank, and then we'll head to dinner.
A quick question. So whoever joins this, how will this affect the political movement, and how will this affect how will this affect the politicians that are what's going on right now, like what's going on with Alberta right now, how they want to separate, and how, like my husband's part of the the development of Ontario, and that's a problem there, and the bureaucracy of signing all the little things, and it takes forever to just build something in Ontario, right? So how is this going to really make a difference in the growth and the jobs and everything else?
But the key is to change the system. The political system doesn't work, right? Because, and Churchill hit it on the, the mandate of a politician is to be elected or re-elected. That means the country is run by political reasons. We got it. But to be a parliamentarian, it should be an honor. It should be successful business. There could be medical, great people in the medical field or in the sport field, etc. But the economy is very important because you got to pay for the things, not this for free. But if we let workers participate in profits, we open their minds, right? They're on the front line. It's an incredible energy what they bring to. I've proven it with 180,000 employees. Okay, thank you.
For one more quick question.
One more.
Hi, Frank. You're talking about between the have and the have-nots. I have a business of less than 300 employees. My question for you is, do you see making it into the charter that if you have a business less than 300 employees that you have to give them profit sharing?
No.
And
low, when you have less than 300, you don't need politicians, you don't need regulators tell you how to run. If you look, you'd never make it a go when you have good employees. The ones which work hard and smart, you got to pay more. You pay more, have a bonus system, or profit sharing, or equity participation. You up the thing here. You got to run. It's only when you get over 300, right, that you need the capitalistic system needs harnessing, because it's if you don't harness, then you see the laws of nature are much stronger than any man-made law. The laws of nature, when a species does not reproduce itself, another species will take over. The capitalistic species does not reproduce itself. Its mission is to, theoretically could be that in 50 years or 100 years, there's 50 capitalists to rule the world. Okay, it's another form of kingdom. We should not destroy the capitalistic system. We must give it all the freedom below 300 employees. When they get larger, then the law says you got to share the profits with the employees. But if you're not going to share with the employees when you be small, and there's many ways of sharing, right? Okay, let that be up to the entrepreneurs and to the business people. Thank you. Thank you.
I now invite everybody to the dining room.